So I think an important question, which we always ask, is how do I get more? So much of our energy is based on a sense of lack. It's like I got one kid, I want to have two. I got $10,000, I want $20,000. I have this job, but I really want this job. I got 18,000 subscribers here, but I'm really aiming for 50,000. Like, it kind of goes on and on. There's a wonderful theory called the hedonic treadmill. Excuse me, the hedonic treadmill. Please don't ask me to spell it. But it's basically saying that psychologically we're wired to feel normal at whatever level we're at. In other words, if you're making $30,000 last year, you started making 60 this year, initially you'll be super hype about it, right? But eventually there'll be the so-called lifestyle creep, and then that 60,000 will make you as happy as a 30,000, right? There's been a lot of studies about that. Often we can be so focused on getting more that we end up losing the narrative. If you want more out of your life, if you're like, I live in a dingy apartment, I really want to get a nicer place, or I want to get out of this tough time and move on to something else. One of the best things you can do is actually creating habits as opposed to thinking about the lack. Thinking about the lack and what you don't have puts your focus on the things that you don't have, right? So lots of ups and downs lately for me, but I got a beautiful house, beautiful kids. I got y'all, I'm chilling. Those are things that other people would kill for. So then it's like, all right, if I want more, if I want to create more, if I want to build more, if I want to have more, whatever that more is, then the best thing that can be done is building in those habits that create it. Now, I meditate every morning and I have my little routine that I do. And, we got little kids running around, even though they're bigger, but they're still running around fighting and throwing swords, fake swords and all this other stuff. Usual stuff that you get, when your kids are 7 and 10. But I still make the time to do that daily meditation, squeeze in those habits, because I know those habits create that routine, which not only ground me, but also those bigger things that I want our family to get to. I know it's an everyday movement. As Atomic Habits author James Clear says, you should aim to be 1% better every day. So I think I have 101 lives with you guys, which I so appreciate. Ideally, at every single live, I'm getting 1% better. As far as me being a parent and being a spouse, ideally every day I'm learning a little bit and getting 1% better. If you're having a tough time or in a tough situation, maybe it doesn't make sense to look at the giant overarching, they call it a moonshot, that's going to get you next level and have it be a panacea. Maybe it's just doing that one thing, the incremental thing, and creating habits that allow you to do that. Fantastic book that I got from my mother, so shout out to you, Mom. I love this book. Speaking of crying, it actually made me cry. It's a fantastic book. It's called Embers, by Richard Wagamese. And I want to say it's One Ojibwe's Journey, something like that. But I always forget the subtitle of it. Fantastic book. I got the audiobook. Audiobook is like an hour and a half long. I wish it was longer, which is always a good sign. You always want people to want more. It's a good sign as far as a good book. It's basically about, you know what? Now that I'm talking with y'all, it reminds me a lot of the work of Stephen Pressfield. And I know my man is here because he always stays with me. You know what? I'm actually reading it right now. So, yeah, I think I'm reading it right now. But that's also a good sign too, because his books stay in rotation. Stephen Pressfield has a serious catalog, and my favorite book of his, as it is for many of us, is The War of Art. It's kind of like almost like an inspirational book for creatives, as far as you getting off of your behind and actually doing the work that you know you're meant to do. But you're dealing with something called resistance, capital R, that's preventing you from showing up fully. And that could be fear, that could be imposter syndrome, that could be what have you. What reminds me of how it's related to Embers is that it almost feels like a hidden autobiography, where it's an older gentleman. I'm assuming Richard is probably in his 70s or 80s. An older gentleman who, for the first half of his life, was kind of wandering around. I think that's literally the way they put it. And homeless for a while, figuring stuff out. And then he collected all this wisdom along the way. And now, obviously, it's his best-selling book, fantastic book. I look forward to, in my mature years, to be able to write as well as he does. Even with my 27 books, I'm not quite to his level. So, I'll give him the highest praise. And he's a keynote speaker and involved in a lot of different things. Same thing with Stephen Pressfield, where by his own discussion and admission, for I think the first 40 years of his life, he was just kind of lost. And then he actually started pursuing his craft because fear was actually holding him back from showing up as his full self. What I love about the book Embers is that, number one, it gets insight into his particular Native American journey. And it's not super deep into that, but there's enough details where you'll learn something from it. The second thing that I love about it is that it's actually written like a poem. And I don't mean Shakespeare, I mean like there's a certain fluidity in the words that he's using and the turn of phrase. And I was actually talking to my mother about it, where I had to text her. I was like, oh my God, I just got to this part. I only been listening for 5 minutes. Like, oh my God, it's what he just said just blew my mind. Like, there's a lot of that. The third part about it, which is why I want to bring it up here, aside from it being an awesome book, is that it also talks about creating those habits, those daily routines, those ways of showing up. And there's a wonderful quote, I want to say from Epictetus. And it says, I'm going to butcher it, but the basic idea is, showing me a man's habits and I know who the man is. In other words, what you do regularly is how you show up. If you regularly spend time with your kids, then you're showing up as a particular type of parent. If you're regularly contributing and pouring into the bucket of other people emotionally, then that's how you're showing up. That comes in the consistency. So if you're having a tough time, you're like, I need to get out of this situation, I need more of this. Think about how your particular habits, your routines might help build you step by step towards creating that. I know business-wise, connecting with 18,000 of y'all with the show, for the first 2 years, it was like a few hundred of y'all. And then suddenly it wasn't. But that came from consistency as much as possible with my 2 little kids and my partnership and a million things going on. I was still able to do about 400 episodes with y'all. At about 200 or so episodes, 250, suddenly it went like this. That's not because I suddenly, became a genius. I do think I got better, but more importantly, I was consistently getting better and consistently showing up. So I think that's kind of that big gem there, is that if you want to get more or create more from that lack that you're feeling right now, focus on the habits. What are those things that you can control and that you can do consistently? A good addendum to this, or dessert, this is called a dessert, I'm not even gonna think about the French term, is an episode I did about 2 years ago, very similar to this one. I talked about books when you're having a tough time. Be sure and check it out if there's more books. I'm only focusing on 3 books this time because I want to keep it focused, and I also wanted to go deeper into each of the books. As you can tell, I'm talking extensively about each of them. This one, I think, has like 5 or 6 books, so it's actually a longer episode. Be sure and check it out if you want more insight. Again, you're watching the Bring Your Worst Show. I'm entrepreneurial coach Damon Brown, here to support you as a side hustler, solopreneur, otherwise non-traditional entrepreneur. Bring Your Worst Show, Wednesdays and Saturdays, 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. Excuse me if I catch my breath. You can subscribe for free right there. It's free until, I'm not Nostradamus, but I think for many years it's going to be free. So get on in and check it out. The water is fine. And today we're talking about having tough times and what books you can read to help you along the way.